poor girl took a homeless man to her ex's wedding, not knowing he was a millionaire. And what he did shocked everyone. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, what city are you watching from? Enjoy the story. Lucia Mendoza opened the mailbox like she was bracing for a ticking time bomb. Not that she had a real reason. Most of her mail lately was either overdue bills or pizza flyers, but something in the air told her this wasn't going to be a good day. And she was right. Amid the crumpled papers and yellowed envelopes, there was an elegant invitation, with gold lettering and a satin ribbon that looked like it was picked just to irritate her. She didn't need to open it to know what it was. But she opened it anyway. Adrian and Rebecca invite Lucia Mendoza to join them in celebrating their dream wedding, Saturday 7 p.m. at the Bella Vista Hall. Lucia blinked, then blinked again. Didn't help. There was the name of her ex-boyfriend, the same guy who, just 3 months ago, was sharing a couch and headphones with her. And next to it, the name of the woman he swore was just a coworker. She sat on the low wall by the building entrance as if her legs had stopped working. "Wedding," she murmured. "A wedding?" It felt like the universe had set up a whole stage just to humiliate her. First the breakup, with that tired speech about needing to find myself. Then the Instagram pictures showing Adrian finding Rebecca at some resort pool. Now, an invitation to watch them get married? At Bella Vista Hall, no less? The place she dreamed of getting married in since she was 15? Lucia jumped up. She stormed back to her apartment, tossed the invitation on the kitchen table, and stared at it like it had just insulted her. He's going to see. I'm going to that wedding, and I'm taking a date who'll make Rebecca trip over her heels. She had no idea who this date would be. But that was a problem for tomorrow's Lucia. Today's Lucia was busy reliving painful memories. In the hours that followed, Lucia did what any reasonable person would do. She opened a box of chocolates, put on a romantic comedy, and pretended she wasn't silently planning a social revenge mission. But as the credits rolled and the sugar started to make her sick, a crazy idea began to take shape. She didn't need a real boyfriend. She just needed someone who looked better than Adrian. Tall, mysterious, maybe someone who looked like he'd been to Europe, or at least knew how to wear a suit. The problem? Lucia didn't know anyone like that, and she definitely didn't have the money to hire a handsome extra. The next day, after another failed attempt to get her old job back and a reminder from her mom that revenge doesn't put food on the table, Lucia went for a walk. She didn't know where she was going. She just needed some air. That's when she saw him. Near the entrance of a fancy restaurant, a man was sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall. His hair was messy, his beard unshaven, and his jacket was way too worn for the warm weather. But somehow he seemed calm. He watched people pass by like he was observing aliens in a documentary. Lucia slowed down. Something about him caught her attention. He wasn't holding out his hand, asking for money, or looking sad. He was just watching, with the eyes of someone who'd seen too much to act surprised anymore. She stopped. "Hey, you okay?" The man looked at her, slowly with a peaceful expression. His eyes were blue, intense, but not proud. "Depends on what you call okay," he replied, his voice rough, deep, almost teasing. Lucia laughed, surprised by the answer. "You've got no shoes? And you look like you lost your way home." "I lost more than that," he said with a shrug. "But now I'm just enjoying the quiet." "Got a name? Do you remember it?" He hesitated. For a moment, he seemed to weigh his answer, like he was choosing which version of the story to tell. "Dylan." Lucia smiled. "Dylan, huh? Sounds like a soap opera character. And you sound like a reporter looking for a headline to get promoted." She let out a laugh. "Close. I'm a former stationery store clerk, recently unemployed, and with a wedding invitation that's been keeping me up at night." He raised an eyebrow. "Now that's a modern-day tragedy." She crossed her arms. "You up for a challenge?" "What kind of challenge?" "Come with me to a wedding, this Saturday. I'll give you a shower, clean clothes, and real food. All you have to do is stay by my side and look incredibly interested in me." Dylan blinked, slowly. "Is this a date or identity theft?" "It's a temporary job," Lucia replied with a smile. "And you look like you've got free time." There was a moment of silence. He studied her face, like he was trying to figure out what she was hiding. But strangely, Lucia felt like he was the one hiding something. "What's the salary?" she asked. "A dinner, a clean bed, and a hot shower. And maybe, if everything goes well, a stylish suit on loan." Dylan pretended to think for a few seconds. "And what's the risk?" "Having fun, and seeing me blush if someone asks how we met." He smiled. For the first time, it was a real smile. Well, why not? Lucia blinked. Seriously? You seem way too fun to say no to. She held out her hand. He shook it firmly. At that moment, Lucia had no idea she was signing the craziest deal of her life, and that this Dylan was a lot more than he seemed, but that she'd find out later. Lucia didn't really know what to expect when she brought a stranger home, but it certainly wasn't this. Dylan, the man she had hired with a strange offer on the sidewalk outside a restaurant, walked beside her like he'd done it 100 times. He didn't seem nervous or curious or even surprised by the idea of going to a strange woman's home. Worse, he acted like it was completely normal. When they arrived at Lucia's small apartment, 2 cramped rooms with yellow walls and furniture inherited from her great-aunt, he just took off his shoes at the door and said, "Got any coffee?" Lucia blinked. "You move fast." "I run on caffeine," he said, tossing his worn backpack on the floor like he was a regular guest. She made the coffee, still feeling like she might be dreaming. And maybe she was. After all, who in their right mind picks up a man off the street to pretend to be their wedding date? But when she put the cup on the table and saw Dylan sit on the couch like a retired diplomat, the doubt came back. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms. "First, I need to lay down a few rules." Dylan nodded, serious. "Of course. Let's make this crazy deal official." She held back a laugh. "First, you can't disappear before Saturday. Second, no making up stories about aliens, cults, or international crime. Third, you need to act like a guy completely in love with me. Intense looks, quiet compliments, that kind of thing." Dylan took a sip of coffee and smiled. "Is this an acting test or an emotional trap?" "It's social survival. I need to show that I'm fine, that I've moved on, you know." "The idiot who sent you a wedding invitation?" he asked casually. Lucia frowned. "How do you know that?" "You told me yesterday, remember?" She didn't, but she let it go. "All right, and what about you? Don't you have any rules for me?" Dylan set the cup on the arm of the couch and looked at her. "Just one." "What is it?" "Don't ask anything about my past." Lucia raised an eyebrow. "Nothing at all? Nothing? Not even what you did before?" "Especially not that." She crossed her arms, spat. "What if someone at the wedding asks?" "Make something up," he said with a teasing smile. "You seem good at that." Lucia sighed, but inside she was curious. That man didn't seem like a homeless guy. The way he spoke, his sharp vocabulary, the calm that was too strange for someone living on the street. "All right," she said. "No questions. Just let me turn you into someone who looks like they belong on a red carpet." He made a theatrical bow on the couch. "I'm in your hands, Miss Mendoza." The next morning, Lucia borrowed a barber kit from her cousin, who's a hairdresser. With the case in hand and a determined look, she walked into the bathroom where Dylan waited with a towel over his shoulder. "Let's start your transformation," she announced, like she was about to sculpt a masterpiece. Dylan sat down in front of the mirror. Lucia tied up her hair, straightened her posture, and started cutting, combing, trimming the beard. She used cream, lotion, cologne, anything she could find in free samples, expired sales, or forgotten in the back of a cabinet. "If you give me an uneven cut, we'll have a problem," he joked, closing his eyes as she carefully shaved. "Stay quiet, or I'll shave off half your eyebrow." Dylan laughed, and the sound of his laughter distracted Lucia for just a split second. Just enough to slip and leave a crooked line on his chin. Oops. Nothing, all under control." She spun the chair, made him stand, and handed him a dress shirt. "Try this on." "Are you always this bossy?" "Only when I'm desperate." Dylan went into the bedroom and came out a few minutes later. And Lucia froze. The man who came out wasn't the same one she had found on the sidewalk. With his hair neatly styled, a clean shave, a slightly fitted white shirt, and dark jeans, Dylan looked like he'd stepped out of a high-end cologne commercial. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an intense gaze. Lucia let out an involuntary wow. Then she coughed to cover it up. "Okay, you'll do," she said, trying not to sound too impressed. Dylan spun on his heels like he was walking an invisible runway. "So, boss, what's my story on Saturday?" She paused for a few seconds. "You're an international sustainability consultant. You work with renewable energy. You travel a lot. We met at an event on urban reforestation. You complimented my volunteer work with rescued animals, and it was love at first sight." Dylan looked at her, trying to keep a straight face. "Wow, that's very specific. How long have you been rehearsing that?" "Since last night." "And you think people will believe it?" Lucia smiled. "No, but you'll make it look real." He winked. "I love a challenge." That night, Lucia had trouble sleeping. Partly from nerves, partly because Dylan was stretched out on the living room couch like he'd lived there for years. She heard his footsteps in the kitchen, the sound of the faucet, and his steady breathing after a few hours. It was strange having someone around, but somehow it wasn't uncomfortable. When she woke up in the morning, he was already up, making coffee. Shirtless. Lucia looked away, embarrassed. "Do you always act like you own the place?" "Just returning the favor, and trying not to burn your toaster." She sighed and took the cup he handed her. "We're only missing one thing." "What's that?" "Practice being a real couple. Eye contact, touching, chemistry." Dylan smiled. "You don't think we have chemistry?" She blushed. That was rhetorical. "Too bad. I thought it was a compliment." Lucia shook her head, laughing, and for a moment she forgot it was all just a crazy plan. It felt almost real. It was Saturday. Lucia Mendoza stood in front of the mirror, trying to convince herself this was just another social event, like a birthday party or a school reunion, with champagne, spotlights, and the presence of the ex-boyfriend who broke her heart and didn't even leave the Wi-Fi paid. She smoothed out the emerald green dress borrowed from her cousin, who swore it brought out her eyes. Though Lucia had her doubts, since her eyes were basic brown and the fabric felt like it could rip with any deep breath. Dylan walked out of the bathroom, adjusting the cuffs on his navy blue shirt and the tie Lucia had put together, with the help of an internet tutorial. He looked so at ease in that outfit, it was hard to believe that just days ago he was sleeping on the street and washing up in public fountains. "Ready?" she asked, trying to hide her nerves. "Always," he replied, with a half-smile that seemed custom-made to shake her emotional balance. In the taxi on the way to the venue, Lucia almost changed her mind 3 times. A voice inside her kept shouting that this made no sense, that it was crazy, that she was about to embarrass herself even more. Then Dylan casually took her hand. "It's gonna be fine, Lucia," he said, sincerely. "You've got this." She took a deep breath. "Or everything's out of control," which, for me, is kind of the same thing. The Bella Vista Hall was lit up like a movie set. White curtains, flowers hanging from the ceiling, soft music, and waiters moving with trays like dancers. Walking in arm with Dylan, Lucia felt all eyes turned toward them. Some in surprise, some out of curiosity, and a few with pure mockery. But no one said anything. Yet, they walked down the main hallway to the guest area. The host greeted them with a rehearsed smile, asked for their names, and scribbled something illegible. Lucia was about to look for a quiet corner when she heard a familiar voice. "Lucia?" It was Adrian. She turned around slowly, as if bracing for impact. There he was, in a flawless suit, hair perfectly styled, and that same expression like he thought the world revolved around him. "Wow," he said, looking at Dylan. "Didn't expect to see you here." Lucia smiled. "The invite said I was welcome, and I never miss a chance to celebrate." Someone else's love. Dylan gave Adrian a firm handshake. "I'm Dylan, Lucia's partner." Adrian seemed to choke on his own breath. "Partner? Like boyfriend?" Dylan looked at Lucia and winked. "Something like that." "We met at a sustainability event," Lucia added. "He works with urban reforestation, an ecologically passionate soul." Adrian blinked, confused. He didn't seem to know whether to laugh or get annoyed. "Interesting," he said. "Lucia, Rebecca's gonna love seeing you. She's always admired you." Admired or envied? Lucia thought, but she smiled. "I can't wait." They sat at a table near the dance floor. Dylan acted like he was used to events like that. He knew how to use the silverware, made quiet compliments about the menu, and even chatted with a couple of business people about sustainable investments, with a confidence Lucia definitely didn't expect. "Where did you learn all this?" she whispered between bites. "On YouTube," he replied, not changing his tone. She laughed, but she wasn't sure if he was joking. When the music stopped, everyone turned to the main staircase. Rebecca appeared, walking in a white dress with enough sparkle to light up a stadium. She smiled like someone who just won an award, and knew she deserved it. "Let the show begin," Lucia murmured. Rebecca walked over to their table. "Lucia," she said, dragging each syllable with fake warmth. "I'm so glad you came, and who is this Greek god?" Lucia smiled with Oscar-worthy self-control. "This is Dylan, my boyfriend." Rebecca looked Dylan up and down. Then she smiled, but her eyes said something else. "A pleasure," she said. "Where are you from?" "Norway," he answered right away. "But I grew up here. My father was a diplomat. I prefer a simple life, but she dragged me here." Rebecca widened her eyes. "How interesting." She turned around and walked off, looking like she needed a moment to process. Lucia covered her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. You just made up an international background. It was that, or say I lived under the North Avenue Bridge. I don't know which one's less likely. Dylan looked around. Do you want to dance? Now? Now is always a good time. She hesitated, then agreed. On the dance floor, under the dim lights and soft music, he pulled her close. Not too close, just enough for their eyes to meet. Are you having fun? He asked. I'm surprised. By what? By you. I'm full of surprises, Lucia. She was about to respond when the main microphone turned on. Adrian stepped onto the stage with a glass in hand. Before the official toast, he said, his voice slightly slurred, I want to thank a few special people. Friends, family, and of course, my dear Lucia Mendoza. Everyone turned to look at her. Lucia felt the ground drop beneath her. A wonderful woman, Adrian continued. We had our time, our story, and it's nice to see you've moved on, with a Norwegian. Some people laughed. Lucia stood up, swallowing hard. Excuse me, I need some air. She stepped out into the garden. Her heart was beating too fast. Seconds later, Dylan appeared. Are you okay? He did that on purpose, she said, angry. He wanted to embarrass me. And you handled it like a queen. She let out a nervous laugh. This is all crazy, Dylan. I made up a boyfriend, brought you to a fake wedding, and now I'm hiding in a garden. Sometimes, a little crazy is the only way to stay sane. She looked at him. He was so close, so calm, so far from the mess she'd made. Who are you, really? Dylan paused for half a second. A man who hates weddings, but for some reason I'm really enjoying this one. Lucia opened her mouth to ask more, but the answer would have to wait. Because at that very moment, her world was about to change. And not because of Adrian or Rebecca, but because of a woman who was walking in from the side of the garden. Let's have some fun with those who only read the comments. Type Burger King in the comments. Only those who made it this far will get it. Now, let's get back to the story. A woman looked at Dylan for 2 seconds. Then said in a low voice, I know you. You shouldn't be here. Lucia slowly turned her head. The woman who had just entered the garden looked like she stepped out of a detective movie. Confident heels, a sharp blazer, hair pulled back in a tight bun, and an even sharper expression. I know you, she repeated, now staring directly at Dylan. He didn't react right away. He just looked at the woman with a slight lift of his eyebrow, like he was trying to remember where he'd seen her. I think you've got the wrong person, he said. In that calm tone, Lucia was beginning to recognize as his default defense. The woman crossed her arms. Really? Because you were a regular at the Navarro Tech front desk 2 years ago. Scruffy beard, shirts always a bit wrinkled, but hard to forget. Lucia felt a chill down her spine. Navarro Tech, that tech company? The woman nodded, still watching Dylan closely. And if I'm not mistaken, you weren't just some random visitor. Dylan took a deep breath, his expression unchanged. Ma'am, you're interrupting a private moment. I'm warning you, she said. Not everyone's forgotten who you are. With that, she turned and disappeared into the bushes, like she'd completed a mission. Lucia stared at Dylan for a long moment, trying to piece it together. But he didn't say a word. He just put his hands in his pockets and looked away. Who are you, really? Dylan, that's all you need to know. Navarro Tech, Dylan. That's not nothing. You told me not to ask about your past, but now your past is knocking on the door and in high heels. He sighed. You want the truth? That would be great. He turned toward her, his face more serious than ever. I used to have money, a lot, fame, status, headlines. I was the heir to Navarro Tech. My full name is Dylan Navarro, but everything fell apart. A scandal with my name on it, a lawsuit that wasn't even mine. And just like that, I lost everything, or almost everything. Lucia blinked, trying to process. You were a billionaire? I was CEO for 6 months. Then my own board pushed me out. I'm not looking for pity. I just needed to disappear for a while, to be invisible, to breathe, away from cameras, reports, lawyers. She took a step back. And now I'm here, pretending to be your boyfriend to get back at your ex. Life's funny, isn't it? Lucia ran a hand over her face. This is a lot, you could have told me. And would you have taken me to the wedding anyway? Silence. Maybe not, she admitted. Exactly. They walked back into the reception in silence. The party was livelier now, with people dancing, louder music, and glasses clinking everywhere. Lucia tried to act normal, but her mind was spinning. Dylan was an ex-billionaire, probably still more than he let on, and she was in too deep. That's when Rebecca showed up again, now with an even more curious look. Everything okay? You two disappeared. Fresh air, Lucia said, forcing a smile. We needed a little breather. I can imagine. I was just telling Adrian how intense you two seem. Dylan stepped forward. That's what happens when there's real chemistry. Rebecca swallowed hard. Lucia saw the discomfort in her eyes and for a second felt a guilty kind of satisfaction. But peace didn't last long. Someone bumped into Dylan hard, one of the groomsmen clearly drunk, and the wine glass he was holding spilled, staining his shirt red. Great, he muttered, looking down at his shirt. Lucia grabbed a napkin from the table and tried to blot the stain, but it was useless. Come on, the bathroom's this way. She led him down a side hallway. They entered a private restroom decorated with fake flowers and scented candles that felt more like false advertising. Dylan took off his jacket and unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a thin scar near his left shoulder. Lucia reached out before she could stop herself. Is that from a fall? He said too quickly. Dylan, it's just a scar. We all have them. She stopped. I don't know what's true or false with you anymore. Then believe what you feel. And what I feel scares me. He looked at her. There was something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before, a quiet vulnerability. Like underneath everything, there was a boy still trying to fix what had been broken. I can leave if you want, he said. Lucia shook her head. It's too late now. If you walk out, it'll look like I was dumped again. He smiled sadly. Then let's keep up the act. For now. Back in the hall, the dance floor was even more crowded. Lucia avoided direct stares, but the whispers were impossible to miss. Someone had recognized Dylan, and she knew it was only a matter of time before something bigger came out. Adrian got on stage again, now with Rebecca beside him, to give the official toast. Dear friends, he began, today we celebrate not only our love, but also the life that goes on, that reinvents itself. And second chances. Lucia felt his eyes on her. Dylan took her hand under the table. Just ignore it. I'm trying. Rebecca then grabbed the mic. And we want to thank everyone who came, especially those who brought a little drama. After all, what's a party without a plot twist? The crowd laughed, but there was tension in the air. Lucia took a deep breath. Things were getting out of hand. She stood up. Dylan followed her. Where are you going? Home. Before I become a meme. Wait. She stopped at the door. This whole thing started as a dumb idea. I know. But now, there are feelings involved. And part of me wishes you were just a regular guy. That this story was simple. I wish that too, Dylan said. But it's not. And she walked out. Dylan didn't follow her. Not yet. Lucia walked into the apartment like someone coming back from a battlefield. She kicked off her shoes into the corner of the room, tossed her clutch onto the table, and collapsed on the couch, still wearing the tight dress and with hairpins poking her scalp. The soft light from the kitchen reflected off the floor, and everything felt too quiet. She could still smell the party on her skin. Expensive perfume, fake flowers, and social tension. Rebecca's smug face, Adrian's sarcastic voice on the mic, and Dylan's eyes. That look stirred something in her, something dangerous. She sighed, took off her earrings, and let her head sink into the pillow. She wanted to sleep for 3 days and wake up believing it had all been just a bad soap opera script, but she didn't even get to close her eyes. The doorbell rang. Lucia froze. She got up slowly, still barefoot, and walked to the door. She looked through the peephole. Dylan. She hesitated. She wasn't sure she was ready for more questions without answers, or for the emotional mess he seemed to carry in his jacket pocket. But she opened the door. I thought it'd be better if we talked, he said, leaning on the doorframe. Lucia crossed her arms. Are you going to tell me another half-truth? No. I came to say thank you. For what? For reminding me I can still be someone outside all the drama. For making me laugh. For letting me into your life, even if it started with a crazy moment. She sighed. Are you hungry? He smiled. Always. A few minutes later, they were sitting on the living room floor, sharing a pack of cookies and 2 mugs of tea that Lucia swore were expired. She had changed into a baggy sweatshirt, and Dylan wore a borrowed t-shirt with an astronaut cat on it. Nice pajamas, he said, taking a bite. Gift from my grandma. She thought I needed to stand out more. Well, she nailed it. I've never seen a cat so focused on floating in space. Lucia laughed, but her laugh quickly faded into a question stuck in her throat. Why did you stay on the street so long? You could have disappeared another way. I don't know, moved to another country, changed your name, lived in a cave. Dylan looked at his mug for a few seconds before answering. Because I wanted to understand what it's like to be invisible. Invisible? When everything fell apart, I realized I was surrounded by people who only cared about what I had. When I lost it all, they disappeared. Life on the streets showed me a different kind of truth. Harsh, ugly, but real. No one there wanted anything except to survive, and somehow I felt more human. Lucia looked at him. There was no drama in his voice. Just truth. So now what? Are you going back to that world? I don't know. Part of me wanted to disappear for good. But then, I met you. She looked away. You've really confused me, Dylan. A lot. I'm confused too. I still don't know if you're a hidden genius or just a functional madman. A bit of both. Lucia laughed again, this time with less weight in her chest. So where are you sleeping? I could go back to the shelter. I'm used to it. Sleep here. On the couch? Of course. You're practically part of the furniture now. Are you sure? She nodded. Just don't snore, or I'll kick you out with a wooden spoon. The next morning, Lucia woke up to the smell of coffee. She stretched, shuffled her feet to the kitchen, and found Dylan in an apron, which was odd considering she didn't even know she owned one. I made coffee and toast. Are you in a commercial now? Just a grateful man with basic survival skills. She took the cup. So now we're, what? Partners in crime, he said with a smile. And how long are you staying? Long enough to figure out how to make you smile every day. Lucia blushed. That was pretty cheesy. I'm adjusting. But the peace didn't last long. That afternoon, on her way back from the store, Lucia noticed a black car parked across the street. A man in a suit sat inside, wearing sunglasses and talking on his phone. She walked faster, trying to ignore it, but something in her gut tightened. Once inside the building, she looked out the window. The car was still there. Later, she told Dylan. His smile vanished instantly. Was it a black sedan, dark windows? Yes. Why? This might be complicated. Dylan. Maybe they're looking for me, or watching me. People who want me gone for good. People. Dangerous? He hesitated. I was hoping for more time. Time for what? To say goodbye properly. Lucia grabbed his arm. You're not running again, not now. I don't want to put you at risk. It's too late. I'm already in this. Dylan lowered his head. Just give me one more day, Lucia. One last day with you. She nodded, not really sure why. Or maybe she knew, because part of her didn't want to imagine life without him anymore. The next day began with a strange feeling in the air, like something was about to happen. Lucia woke up even before her alarm went off, her heart racing and her thoughts all over the place. Seeing Dylan on the couch should have seemed ridiculous. A stranger, a former billionaire in disguise, sleeping with his mouth open, covered with a leopard print blanket, hugging the stuffed pillow she got when she was 15. And yet, there was something oddly comforting about that scene. She stood at the living room door for a few minutes, watching him sleep, trying to understand what she felt. It wasn't just confusion. It was something else. A quiet, restless kind of affection. A need to protect him. And at the same time, to strangle him for all the things he hadn't said. Dylan slowly opened his eyes, as if he could feel her staring. Good morning, he murmured, his voice raspy from sleep. Do you always watch people while they sleep? Only when they hide billionaire identities in their hoodie pockets. He smiled. Do I look like someone who owns stocks? You look like someone who needs to brush their teeth. After breakfast, made with almost expired white bread and powdered juice, Lucia decided she needed to get out. Clear her head. Think. Dylan offered to go with her, but she said no. Give me an hour. I need to think alone. And you need a real shower. He raised his hands in surrender. Fair enough, I'll use the passion fruit shampoo. She left laughing, but the laugh didn't last past the corner. Something felt wrong. She could feel it. She walked to the central square, where she used to sit and think whenever life felt chaotic. The same square where, just a few days ago, she had met Dylan for the first time. She sat on the same bench. The irony didn't go unnoticed. And that's where she was, scrolling through her phone, when something made her heart stop for a second. A news alert popped up in bold letters. Former Navarro Tech CEO spotted in southern neighborhood after 2-year disappearance. The attached photo was distant and slightly blurry, but unmistakable. It was Dylan, sitting with her in the garden of the event hall. Lucia felt her blood run cold. She looked around, half expecting photographers to pop out of the trees. She took a deep breath and clicked on the article. Anonymous sources say Dylan Navarro, heir and former president of Navarro Tech, is alive and was seen at a private social event last weekend. The company declined to comment. Dylan has been missing since the 2021 scandal when he resigned and disappeared from public life. Lucia read it all in one go. Her head throbbed. This was no longer just personal. It was front-page news. It was exposure. And she was right in the middle of it. She stood up quickly. She had to go back. When she got home, the door was slightly open. She froze. She pushed it slowly, quietly. The living room was empty. So was the kitchen. Dylan? Nothing. Suddenly, she heard muffled voices coming from the bedroom. She quietly approached and put her ear to the door. "I told you it wasn't the right time." She recognized his voice. Tense. "You don't get to pick the time, Dylan. This is out of control. They're already closing in on you. If you don't act now, you'll lose everything again." The other voice was female. Cold. Professional. Lucia pushed the door open. Dylan was standing by the bed, phone in hand. On speaker, the woman on the other end didn't even seem to have the patience to breathe. "Who is that?" Lucia asked. Dylan hung up immediately. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh, great. Because it looks like you've been hiding in my apartment while your name is all over the internet and some mystery woman is trying to run your life from afar. She's my legal advisor. She's trying to keep the media off my back." Lucia crossed her arms. "And when were you planning to tell me?" "I was going to tell you today." "Of course. After lunch? During the soap opera?" He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Lucia, I didn't want to drag you into this. I swear. I tried to keep everything under control, but it got away from me." "No, what got away was the bare minimum of honesty. I was just trying to protect you." "From who? Your past or yourself?" Silence. "I need to think," she said. "And honestly, I need you to leave." Dylan lowered his head, took a deep breath, and grabbed his backpack. "If that's what you want, it is." He walked past her without another word. The door closed slowly behind him, and the sound of the doorknob turning echoed louder than any argument. Lucia spent the rest of the day trying to stay busy. She did laundry, cleaned the bathroom, and rearranged the kitchen silverware in alphabetical order. A completely pointless task, she knew, but oddly therapeutic. Late in the afternoon, she got a call from a friend who worked at a local news agency. "Hey, did you hear?" "Hear what?" "They're saying you're Dylan Navarro's new girlfriend. It's all over the gossip sites. There's your photo, your name, even a link to your profile." Lucia felt her stomach turn. "They're saying my name?" "Yes, and it's not mild. Some people are saying you were an accomplice, that you helped him hide, that it was all a setup." She hung up, not knowing what to say. Accomplice? She was being accused of hiding a former billionaire? She grabbed her phone. The notifications wouldn't stop. Friend requests, messages from strangers, aggressive comments on old photos. It felt like her life had turned into a reality show she never signed up for. By early evening, the doorbell rang. Lucia didn't want to open it. She didn't want to see anyone. But something in her chest said it was him. And it was. Dylan, now in a dark jacket with tired eyes, was holding an envelope. "I came to drop this off." "What is it?" "My documents, and a letter. It explains everything, if you want to read it." She took the envelope with both hands, but didn't open it. "You said you wouldn't come back." "I know, but I also know I need to end this the right way." "You already ended it, Dylan. When you lied, when you left, when you used me to hide." He shook his head. "I didn't use you. You didn't. I did hide, yes, but you brought me back. You made me remember who I was before it all. Before the money, the pressure, the betrayal. With you, I was just Dylan. For the first time in a long while." Lucia didn't answer. He took a step back. "If you don't want to see me again, I get it. But please, read the letter, even if it's just to hate me with the truth." And he left. Lucia sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of her. She opened it slowly. The letter was handwritten, the words leaning slightly, steady on the page. "Lucia, when I ran away from my old life, I didn't know what I was looking for. I just wanted to disappear. Erase the name, the image, the pain. But you found me. With your wild questions, your sharp humor, your courage to face the chaos. You made me laugh when all I wanted was to vanish. You brought me back. Yes, I lied. I hid. But everything I felt with you was real. And if you can still see anything in me, even after the mistakes, I'll be waiting." On the other side of the bridge, Dylan. Lucia leaned back in the chair. Tears threatened to fall, but she held them in. She didn't know if it was pain, anger, or longing. Maybe all of it at once. She stood up, grabbed her jacket, and left. The sky was already darkening when she reached the North Avenue Bridge, the place he always talked about, like a quiet symbol. And there he was, sitting on the edge, looking at the horizon with the calm of someone who's already lost everything, yet still watches the world go by. "You came," he said, without turning. "I came to say I haven't forgiven you yet." "Fair enough. But maybe I want to try to understand." He turned his head and their eyes met. That's enough, and for the first time, neither of them needed to say anything else. The night after Lucia met Dylan at the bridge, she woke up feeling like everything around her was on pause, like time had stopped breathing and the world was waiting to see what she would do next. Dylan was still asleep on the couch, his face calm, almost peaceful. He looked like a different person, nothing like the man she first met on the sidewalk. It was as if he was slowly taking off the armor that kept him hidden and becoming real again. But Lucia didn't feel ready. Inside, she was still at war. She closed the kitchen door gently, poured herself a weak cup of coffee, and sat at the table with her phone in hand. More messages. More notifications. Her name was still everywhere online. Gossip sites were speculating everything, from a secret romance with the rebel billionaire to conspiracy theories saying she was the mastermind behind his escape. "This is getting out of hand," she muttered. And it was true. People were trying to add her mother on Facebook. Her old boss gave an interview saying he'd always suspected she had a double life. Someone had even created a fake Instagram account under the name Lucia Official Navarra. That morning, she made a decision. She had to disappear. Breathe. Think far away from all of it. She packed a small backpack, left a note on the fridge. "I need some time. Don't look for me. I'll come back." And left without looking back. Dylan woke up a little later, with the smell of lukewarm coffee still in the air. He yawned, rubbed his face, and called out instinctively, "Lucia?" Silence. He got up, walked to the kitchen, saw the cup alone on the table and the note on the fridge. He read it once, twice, 3 times, as if on the 4th it would say something different. "No," he whispered. "Not now." The call came just minutes later. It was Helena, his legal advisor. "We have a problem." "Another one?" The wedding video leaked online. One of the groomsmen posted it in his stories and it got shared. "The media already knows you're with her, and she's gone." "I know." "Dylan, this is serious. You're walking a fine line between staying under the radar and becoming an international scandal. If Lucia isn't found soon, the authorities will assume the worst." "You think she ran away from me?" "I think she ran away from what this all became, from the weight you carry, from the spotlight." He pressed the phone against his ear. "I'll find her." "How?" "The same way she found me." On the other side of the country, in the small village where her grandmother was born, Lucia sat on the porch of a modest house, surrounded by plants, cats, and silence. Aunt Rosa, who had taken her in without asking questions, served her lemon tea and said things like, "Life only rushes when we try to slow down." Lucia had turned off her phone. She didn't want to see more headlines, messages, or questions. She needed to remember who she was before it all. Before the fancy dress, before the crazy plan, before Dylan. She needed to know if there was still a Lucia inside who wasn't tied to the word scandal. Every day, she walked to the church square and watched the older men play dominoes. Sometimes she'd write scattered thoughts, memories, and phrases in a spiral notebook. And she tried hard not to think about that crooked smile, that deep voice telling her she had brought him back. But she couldn't help it. Dylan was in everything, in the clouds, in the songs, in the little gestures, and even far away, it felt like he was still by her side. Meanwhile, Dylan did what he did best. He investigated. He found old photos of Lucia with her grandmother, searched Aunt Rosa's name in public records, and in less than 24 hours, he knew she had relatives in a village 300 kilometers from the capital. But he didn't take a helicopter or a luxury car. He went by bus, just like she would. He got off at a dirt road station with a backpack and a borrowed hat to avoid being recognized. He walked through the simple streets, asking about a short girl with wild hair who talks to herself while walking. Finally, an older woman pointed to the house with lavender pots on the porch. "There, but take it slow. That girl's got a bruised heart." He thanked her and walked up. Before he could knock, the door opened. Lucia looked at him in silence. "How did you find me? You taught me how to look." She looked away. "You should be hiding. You're taking a big risk coming here." "I've already risked everything. One more thing won't change much." "Dylan, please let me speak." She nodded slowly. "I know I made mistakes. I kept too much from you, dragged you into a storm you didn't ask for. But even with all the chaos, every moment with you was real. You lied. I lied about who I used to be, but not about who I am with you. Lucia took a deep breath. I ran because I got scared. Scared I'd lose myself in all this madness. And I ran because I didn't want to be anyone anymore. But you made me want to come back. Silence. Aunt Rosa's voice echoed from the kitchen. If you're going to propose, wait until the coffee's ready. Lucia laughed, and something inside her cracked. Or maybe it healed, or both. She opened the door fully. Come in, but if you get dramatic, I'll make you do the dishes. In the days that followed, Dylan stayed at Aunt Rosa's house. He helped in the garden, burned the toast at breakfast, and was officially adopted by one of the house cats. Lucia still didn't know what they were. A couple? Friends? Two emotional runaways trying to find themselves? But she knew her heart felt lighter when he was around. One night, sitting on a bench in the square, Dylan pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is what's left of my share in the company. A full buyout offer. If I sign, I cut all ties, and I can start over, from scratch. Why haven't you signed? Because I need to know if you'd be part of that new beginning. Lucia was quiet. I don't know if I can promise anything. I just know I don't want to keep running. Me neither. She held out her hand. He placed the pen in it. And there, under the soft yellow light of an old street lamp, Dylan Navarro stopped being an heir, a CEO, a runaway, and became just Dylan again. 2 weeks later, the scandal vanished from the headlines. Navarro Tech released an official statement confirming the former president's voluntary departure and the closure of all open investigations. The media moved on as soon as a new celebrity decided to get married 3 times in 1 week. Lucia went back home, and Dylan went with her. This time, like he belonged, he no longer slept on the couch, nor hid his scars. They didn't have everything figured out. Didn't know what the future held, but they had the present. And that was enough, until a new envelope arrived in the mail. Lucia picked it up, read it out loud, and her eyes widened. The City Council of Culture invites Lucia Mendoza and Dylan Navarro to receive the Social Action Medal for their community project. She choked up. What project? Dylan smiled. Aunt Rosa gave me an idea. Remember the cats, the garden, the tea, and your quotes in the notebook? Yes. We're starting a cultural center in the neighborhood, a welcoming space, with art, food, plants, and cats. Lucia blinked. You built a social project based on my aunt? And on your heart? She looked at him, trying to seem upset. You're impossible. And you chose me anyway. At the award ceremony, simply but nicely dressed, they walked onto the stage holding hands. The presenter smiled. And to think this all started with a wedding invitation. Lucia laughed. Dylan pulled her close and whispered, Can I do this now? Do what? He got down on one knee. The audience gasped. Lucia froze. You're kidding. No, I'm finally living. He opened a little box. Inside 2 hand-carved wooden rings. No diamonds. No big show. Lucia Mendoza, will you marry me? No exes, no mansions, no headlines. Just me, you, and the beautiful mess we make work. She laughed. This is so ridiculous. I know, but it's so us. And she said yes. If someone had told Lucia Mendoza 3 weeks earlier that she'd be receiving a social action medal next to a former billionaire disguised as a homeless man, and that he would propose to her with hand-carved wooden rings, she would have laughed so hard she'd choke on her own spit. And yet, there she was, with the ring on her finger, and a crowd clapping like it was a scene from a romantic movie with a guaranteed happy ending. But Lucia knew. Life didn't come with background music or smooth closing credits. Real life had fine print, and she still needed to read it carefully. Are you sure about this? Lucia asked, sitting cross-legged on the living room couch. She was wearing an old high school t-shirt and holding a cup of mint tea. Dylan stood in front of her, a button-down shirt open over a white tee, looking calmer than usual. Sure about what? About all of this. Us. The project. The marriage. The world knowing our names. He came closer, sat next to her with a quiet smile. I was never sure about anything until I met you. And now, I'm still not sure about everything. But I'm sure about you. Lucia pressed her lips together, thinking. That was beautiful. And true. But I still need us to put things on paper. What kind of things? She got up, grabbed a sheet of paper and a pen, and came back with a playfully serious look. Let's sign our emotional agreement. A realistic living together contract. No happily ever after promises with no expiration date. This is a heart with terms and conditions. Dylan raised an eyebrow, amused. I'm listening. Lucia snapped her fingers and started dictating. Clause number 1. If we argue, no one gets to sleep on the couch, unless the couch is actually more comfortable than the bed. Agreed, he said, signing an invisible line in the air. Clause number 2. We take turns making breakfast, and burnt toast still counts as a valid effort. Deal. 3. Secrets must be shared eventually, preferably before they become public scandals. You mean my past? Yours, mine, ours. If you ever find out I'm heir to a lunchbox factory, I want you to know right away. Got it, Lucia smiled, satisfied. Then she hesitated. And there's the hardest emotional clause. Which one? She looked at him seriously. If either of us ever feels like we're losing who we are, we pause, we talk, we reassess. Dylan nodded slowly. Lucia, I don't want to drown you in my past or drag you into my old story. I want to build a new one with you. One where I still get to be me. And I finally get to be just Dylan. In the days that followed, they started putting the cultural center plan into action. Aunt Rosa's house, once just a quiet refuge, became the heart of the project. In the front, they built a small space for artwork shops, a mini library, and a wall with inspiring quotes, all taken from Lucia's old notebook. Dylan handled the structure, the contacts with local nonprofits and businesses. Lucia ran the workshops, organized events, and painted murals with neighborhood kids. The project started small, but it quickly gained attention. Not because of the Navarro name, but because of how naturally it grew. Everything there had soul, purpose, and truth. But success brought more than applause. One day, while she was organizing the donated books, Lucia had a visit from an elegant woman, wearing high heels, expensive perfume, and a carefully calculated, friendly expression. Miss Mendoza, she said, handing over a business card. I'm Camila Torres, director of the Horizon Foundation. Lucia read the card. She had heard of the foundation before. They had social projects in various cities and a history of adopting local initiatives to expand them. How can I help you? I saw your work with the Raiza Center. We're interested in investing. Full sponsorship, a new headquarters, a fixed salary for you and your team, national publicity. Lucia blinked. That sounds generous. It is, but we want to associate the foundation's image with your story. The overcoming, the romance with Dylan, the modern-day fairy tale. That sells. Lucia froze. Oh, so that's it? Camila smiled. Think of it as an opportunity. Right now, you're local. With us, you can be international. And how long until we lose control over what we've built? The foundation only guides. Lucia crossed her arms. Thank you. But our project is about roots, and roots don't transplant easily. Camila smiled, but her eyes went cold. Think carefully. The world can forget quickly if you don't know how to keep their interest. Lucia handed back the card. We're not here to entertain, we're here to transform. That night, she told Dylan everything. You turned them down? He asked, surprised. Of course, she wanted to turn us into a spectacle, sell our pain as an inspiring story. Dylan thought for a moment. Can I be honest? You should. Part of me was tempted. Lucia nodded. Me too. But only for a second. Then we're on the same page, and on the same contract. One afternoon, during one of the workshops, a girl named Bia asked, Aunt Lucia, are you and Uncle Dylan really going to get married? Lucia laughed. Why do you ask? Because you argue with him like my mom used to argue with my dad, before they got married. Lucia choked on the crayon. And how are they now? Separated. Oh, Bia, but happy. Lucia looked at Dylan, who was handing out books in the corner of the room. He smiled from afar, and she felt a warm tightness in her chest. Maybe happiness wasn't about contracts or ceremonies, but about moments like these. Simple, true. A few days later, Dylan surprised her with a dinner in the backyard. String lights, a table with food he made, or almost. The rice was from Aunt Rosa, and soft music in the background. What's this? Lucia asked, a reminder that even without a mansion, yacht, or red carpet, we can have luxury. True luxury, like hearing your laugh without interruptions. She laughed, as if following the request. Then he pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I made a contract too. Lucia raised an eyebrow. Really? He opened it and read, Clause 1. Love Lucia Mendoza every day, even when she forgets the rice on the stove, complains about the smell of my shampoo, or tries to sleep with 3 cats in the bed. She covered her mouth with her hand, laughing and touched. And what's the penalty for breaking this clause? Having to win you over all over again. Then I hope you're good at it. I've already started practicing. They toasted with orange soda and danced under the backyard lights. The following week, they organized the first open event at the Raiza Center. Art workshops, dance performances, live music. They invited the whole community. Dylan handled the reception with a badge that read, Lucia's assistant. Lucia teased him. I thought you were going to write CEO. Only for you. At the end of the day, exhausted, they sat on the sidewalk with ice cream in their hands and children running around. Lucia leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you think we'll be able to keep all of this going? If we keep putting clauses in the right places? Yes. On paper? In the heart. She smiled. Then just in case, write down one more. Go ahead. Never let love become an obligation. Signed. He grabbed a stick and wrote on the dirt, love with clauses is love that's taken care of. And in that moment, they didn't need anything else. Real life was exactly that. Messy, intense, full of spelling mistakes, but with sentences worth underlining. Lucia Mendoza was never a fan of audiences. Since she was a child, she'd hide behind the curtains during school performances and pretend to have a stomachache to escape group projects involving microphones. So, the idea of speaking in front of 200 people at a formal ceremony made her hands cold and her stomach twist. Let's have a little fun with those who only read the comments. Type Pepsi in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. Still, there she was, wearing a burgundy dress, subtle makeup, and a pair of heels borrowed from her cousin. Trying to look natural as the last guests arrived at the auditorium of the Fundación Cultura Viva. The Centro Raíces, the project she and Dylan had created, had been selected to receive an award for social impact. It was the kind of thing she'd only seen happen in news stories with background music. Now, she was the one standing on stage. Dylan was backstage reviewing the speech he'd written by himself, promising it would be brief. But Lucia knew that look. The same one he had when he pretended not to know how to fry eggs just to convince her to make breakfast. Dylan, please, don't do anything crazy today, she said, adjusting the collar of his shirt. This event isn't about us. It's about the project. I know, I'll be low-key. Low-key, like charmingly reserved? Low-key, like I'll try not to steal the spotlight with my irresistible smile. She rolled her eyes. I'm serious. So am I. The ceremony started on time, with formal speeches, nice words, and bureaucratic thanks. Lucia tried to look engaged, but the sweat on her palms gave her away. And now, the host announced, we invite to the stage the founders of the Centro Raíces project, Miss Lucia Mendoza and Mr. Dylan Navarro. The audience applauded. Lucia felt her legs grow heavy. Dylan extended his hand as if she were a princess about to enter a grand ballroom. Ready? He whispered. No, but here we go. They climbed the stage together. The applause stopped. Lucia stared at the crowd, the microphone, the lights, and froze. Dylan, noticing, smoothly took the lead. Good evening. I know we're here because of a successful social project, but honestly, none of this would have happened if I hadn't literally tripped over Lucia Mendoza. In the middle of the street, in the rain. I might seem hard to knock down, but she managed it, and since then, I haven't gotten up the same way. The audience laughed, sharing the moment. Lucia is the heart of Centro Raíces, and she's also the heart of what's left of my life. I lost everything before her. Status, company, name. But she gave me back what mattered, humanity. And more than that, she gave me a place. Lucia blinked. That wasn't in the original speech. Dylan turned to her. And since we're here with so many people who've supported us, I want to take this moment to say something I've been rehearsing for days. Her eyes widened. Dylan, no, but he had already kneeled. A whisper ran through the crowd like an electric breeze. Lucia froze. Lucia Mendoza, he said, holding the microphone and looking into her eyes, would you give me more than just your talent, your laughter, and your patience with my bad jokes? Would you give me the chance to be yours forever? Silence, long, heavy. Lucia felt the world spin slowly. The answer was stuck in her throat, not because she didn't love him. She knew she did. She loved Dylan with a silent intensity, the kind that makes you rethink everything you're sure about. But there, in front of everyone, with cameras, phones, flashes, she felt the weight of a new fear. The fear that this wasn't just love but expectation, pressure, image. She took a step back. I'm sorry, she murmured, and left the stage. The audience held its breath. Dylan stayed kneeling for another second, then stood up, saying nothing. The host tried to recover the mood with a joke about live emotions, but the awkwardness was already apparent. Lucia didn't know how she got home. All she knew was that when she walked in, she threw her shoes far away, unbuttoned her dress in the hallway, and collapsed onto the bed with her head buried in the pillow. She felt like a monster. Dylan's face replayed in her mind in a loop. Surprised, hurt, yet still kind. Why had she done that? Maybe because she was still trying to figure out where the project ended and life began. Or maybe because everything felt like it was moving too fast. Or perhaps because she knew herself well enough to know she needed time to think before taking such a big step. But none of that erased the pain or the guilt. Hours later, her phone buzzed with a single notification. Dylan, I won't ask for answers. I just want you to know I'd still choose you, even without certainty. She didn't reply. She couldn't. In the following days, she avoided the cultural center. She asked Aunt Rosa to cover her activities and spent most of her time locked in her room, trying to reconnect with something inside her that wasn't broken. Around town, the rumors started to spread naturally. That she had rejected him, that the project was going to end, that it had all been a poorly calculated marketing stunt. But surprisingly, Dylan didn't disappear. He kept showing up at the center, organizing activities, smiling at the kids, handing out books as if nothing had happened. Lucia watched from afar through the window of the room whenever she could, and every time she saw him, her chest tightened just a little more. Until one day, she found an envelope stuck under the door. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Sometimes, we need to go to the ends of the earth just to realize we were already where we were meant to be. I'm still here, if you want to come back. Lucia folded the paper carefully and put it in the memory box she kept hidden at the back of the closet. The next day, she decided to return to the Centro Raíces. She showed up unexpectedly, wearing a cap and sunglasses, as if that was enough to go unnoticed. But when she entered the main hall, she was greeted with hugs, smiles, and cornbread made by the kids. "Aunt Lucia's back!" shouted Bia, pulling her by the hand to the bulletin board. Dylan was there, hanging new photos on the activity board. When he saw her, he stopped, smiled gently, and simply said, "Hey, hey," she replied. They stood in silence for a few seconds, surrounded by the sound of children's laughter and hurried footsteps. Lucia took a deep breath. "I ran away. I know. And you stayed here. Because this place isn't just yours, it's ours, but I couldn't keep going without you. I'm sorry. You don't have to be." She bit her lower lip. I felt pressured, so exposed, so expected to be something I was still trying to understand. "I should have asked you privately. No, you followed your heart, and I needed to run away to listen to mine." He looked her in the eyes. "And what did it say?" She smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "That you don't need to be sure of everything to choose someone. You just need courage." "So?" "I'm not saying yes right now." Dylan nodded. "That's fine. But I'm not saying no either." "Even better." She took his hand. "For now, I just want to live with you. No rush, no stage, just us. And the kids, and the cats, and Aunt Rosa. Exactly, our real version of happy as long as it lasts." Dylan pulled her into a hug, and there, in the middle of the cultural center, with the smell of fresh paint and cornbread in the air, they found a new kind of promise. One without fanfare. One that started with silence and trust. In the days that followed, Dylan deleted all notifications from his phone, declined interviews, and disconnected from social media. Lucia temporarily deactivated her profile and spent more time with the kids, painting murals with phrases like, "Being happy doesn't need an audience," and "Love that doesn't rush, blooms." They became the couple no one recognized on the street, and the couple that recognized each other in small gestures. They shared chores, dreamed of the future, argued over which seasoning to use in the soup, laughed at bad jokes, and reconnected fully. That morning, Lucia woke up to the sound of church bells ringing in the distance. She was lying on the couch in the living room, hugging one of Dylan's pillows, which smelled like him and had a little frayed corner that she always promised to sew. The house was quiet, but not empty. It had never been empty since then. She got up slowly, barefoot, passed through the kitchen, and found a scene that seemed to already be part of the routine. Dylan preparing coffee with the care of a French chef, wearing the apron with lemon print that Aunt Rosa had given him as a living together prize. "Did you sleep well?" he asked without turning around. "I slept enough to dream." "With what?" "With a life where things make sense." He chuckled softly. "You want sense? You'll have to swap this coffee for chamomile tea and 5 therapy sessions." "Too late, I'm already addicted to the chaos." He turned around, holding 2 steaming cups. "Great, because we've got another dose coming." Lucia raised an eyebrow. "Why? What did you do?" "Nothing, but I got an email from a publisher." She choked on the smell of coffee. "A publisher?" Someone heard about Central Raíces, the public marriage proposal, and the no that was the most polite rejection of the century. They want to turn it all into a book, a real love story in a world of filters and performances. Lucia sighed. They want to turn our life into a romance script? I told them we weren't interested, but they insisted. They even suggested a ghostwriter to work with us. This is going too far. I agree, but he looked at her with that mischievous look. What if we told our version? Our way? No glamour, no making things up, just the truth. The stumbles, the fears, the hugs at the wrong time. The contract with clauses. The cakes you burn. Hey, he laughed, a book that inspires without lying, that talks about loving someone without turning them into an unreachable ideal. Lucia was silent for a few seconds. And if they get it wrong, then we'll fix it. But at least the story will be ours. She sighed. Let's think about it later. Right now, I want to live a real chapter without needing to revise it. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a light but no less intense rhythm. Lucia went back to teaching art at the center, and Dylan set up a small mobile library with a cart he built himself, the bibliocaro, as the kids called it. It was a blue-painted wheelbarrow with wide wheels and compartments for books, games, and notebooks. They would push it through the neighborhood streets, offering free reading in parks and bus stops. The project slowly became a part of the city's landscape. But one rainy afternoon, something unexpected happened. Lucia was walking home alone, after picking up paint for a new workshop. She was crossing a narrow street, her feet soaked and the bag slipping from her hand, when she heard someone call her name. Lucia Mendoza? She turned around, instinctively ready with a defensive answer. Two men in suits were leaning against a discreet car, holding briefcases. We're from the legal department of Navarro Holdings. We need to talk to you. About what? About Mr. Dylan Navarro and the estate that still legally belongs to him. Lucia furrowed her brow. Dylan doesn't want any of that. He's already given it up. Formally, yes, but there are open clauses, and there's internal movement in the company trying to bring him back to the board. You want him to come back? As CEO again? We want to avoid someone else taking over and destroying what's left of the company. Lucia gripped the bag tighter. Then why are you telling me this? Because, from what we know, you're the one who can convince him of anything. She took a deep breath. That's not true. It may not be, but he listens to you. Lucia spent the whole night turning the situation over in her mind. She didn't want to drag Dylan into it, but she also knew that if she didn't say anything, she might regret it later. He deserved to make the decision himself. The next morning, she told him everything. Dylan listened attentively without interrupting. They said that? He asked at the end. That I should go back to the company? That you could save it. Or watch it be destroyed by people who only care about profit. He stood up, walked to the window, and stood silent for a few minutes. I don't know if I can go back, he said, finally. That place, there's so much that hurt me. But there's also so much of what you built. He turned around, hesitant. Do you think I should? Lucia approached slowly. I think you should choose based on what you feel, not what you think you should do. And if I want to try, then try. But do it for yourself. And know that, no matter what happens, you're not the same man you were before. You're the Dylan who carries books in a blue cart and fights with cats for space on the couch. He smiled. And you? I'll be here, taking care of the kids, the paints, and the mess we leave behind. Dylan left the following week. He didn't take a suit or a tie. He only took his direct approach, his steady gaze, and the conviction that he could, yes, participate in what he once helped build, without losing himself in the process. Lucia saw him off at the bus station. The goodbye was brief, without tears. When will you be back? When it's over. That's vague. I know. Are you scared? I am, but I'm more afraid of not trying. Then go, and come back whole. During his absence, Lucia kept herself busy. She organized workshops, set up a new bulletin board with collages made by the kids, replanted the center's gardens, and started writing about the days. About everything. Not like a journal, but like a map, a trail, something Dylan could follow back. He called every night. He told her about the meetings, the reactions, the surprises. The company was in crisis, but the board was divided. There was resistance, but also hope. I think they want change. They just don't know how to call it. Call it real life, she answered, and show them you don't need a tie to be heard. After 11 days, Dylan came back. Lucia waited for him at the bus stop, with the bibliocaro parked beside her. So, she asked as he stepped off. He smiled, tired but at peace. I'm not going back as CEO, but I agreed to be a mentor to the new director, and I'll oversee the transition, from afar, the way I believe in. And they accepted. After a lot of insistence, I showed them the reports from the Central Raíces, the stats, the impacts. They finally understood that success isn't just measured by profit. I always said you were good with words. I just repeated what you taught me. That night, they celebrated, with poorly cut pizza and soda in glass cups. They laughed at the kids trying to perform magic with cardboard and were moved by the presentation of certificates to the teenagers who finished the first photography course. Lucia sat next to Dylan by the courtyard mural. I think we're ready. For what? For the final chapter? Do we still have one? Just one. And what happens in it? Lucia smiled. You'll find out tomorrow, but I can give you a little hint. There will be confetti, cake, and maybe a cat dressed in a suit. Sounds promising? And ridiculous. Our kind of ending. They hunt. The city woke up restless, not because of political news, not because of business scandals, nor because of the weather forecast that had been wrong once again. It was a different kind of buzz, a chatter that spread from mouth to mouth, from neighbor to neighbor, from market vendors to the aunties selling empanadas in the square. There was going to be a wedding, but not just any wedding. The rumor said it would be at the cultural center. They said the bride was a girl who once took a homeless man to her ex's wedding, and the groom, they claimed, was actually a millionaire in disguise. They said a lot of things, and all of them were right, and yet far from the truth. Lucia woke up early that morning, but she wasn't nervous. Unlike all the brides she saw in movies, she didn't trip over her veil, didn't silently shed tears, and didn't have a panic attack over the decorations. She was calm, maybe because she knew exactly where she was standing, who she was marrying, and most importantly, why she had chosen this path. The ceremony was set in the Raíces center courtyard, surrounded by colorful murals, plants in recycled tire pots, and little handmade flags made by the kids. No red carpet. Instead, there were dry leaves collected from the square, spread by little hands with the enthusiasm of a festa junina. Her dress? A simple, straight linen design. The neighborhood seamstress had made it in exchange for a month of painting classes for her grandchildren. Lucia looked at herself in the makeshift mirror, made from an old piece of glass, and smiled. She looked perfect. Dylan, on the other hand, was wearing a navy blue suit with no tie, his hair combed with effort, and a nervousness he tried to hide with awkward jokes. He was leaning against the main building door, trying to breathe normally while the makeshift groomsmen adjusted the last-minute decorations. Bia, the curious girl who was always asking if Dylan and Lucia were getting married, ran in with a cardboard box. Uncle Dylan! The cat ran away again. What? Tico. Aunt Lucia said he was going to be the cat of the rings, but he climbed the fence and went after a pigeon. Dylan rubbed his forehead. Okay, new plan, you're gonna take the rings. Bia smiled from ear to ear. Really? Yes, just don't run after pigeons too. She laughed and skipped off. The music started with an out-of-tune guitar played by one of the teenagers in the music workshops. The chairs were filled with a chaotic mix of neighbors, friends, volunteers, and curious people who came to check if it was really true. Lucia entered beside Aunt Rosa, who wore a floral dress and a hat much too big for the occasion, but perfectly suited to her personality. Remember, Aunt Rosa whispered as they walked, a wedding isn't a promise of paradise, it's a battle partnership. Choose your battles and your jokes carefully. Lucia smiled. Dylan was standing, waiting for her with moist eyes, not from nervousness, but from fulfillment, as if finally everything was in its place. He really came, he said when she stopped by his side. Only because I knew Tico would run away. I thought you were going to change your mind again. I almost did, but I realized this isn't about certainty, it's about courage. Then let's go with courage. The ceremony was led by Helena, Dylan's legal advisor, who had ditched the heels and suit for a yellow linen dress and a beaded necklace made by one of the kids. We are here, she began, holding the microphone with a genuine smile, to celebrate something you don't see every day. A love that survived doubt, the press, a runaway cat, and even a public rejection in front of an uncomfortable audience. The crowd laughed. Dylan and Lucia did too. This couple doesn't need eternal promises, Helena continued. They need clear agreements, emotionally revisable clauses, and lots of humor. Because, if there's one thing I've learned from them, it's that love only survives if we remember to laugh between one crisis and the next. Bea appeared running with a cushion holding two simple silver rings, made from recycled silver by a community artisan. Dylan picked up his ring and, looking at Lucia, said, "I promise I won't run away when the dishes pile up or when the bills arrive. I promise to listen to you even when I don't understand a thing you're saying. I promise to choose you every day, even on the hard days." Lucia held his hand firmly. "And I promise not to expect answers for everything. I promise to be honest, even when it's tough. I promise to take care of your silence and share mine. And most of all, I promise to laugh at your bad jokes. As long as you laugh at mine too." They exchanged rings to spontaneous applause and emotional hugs. Nothing about it was conventional. Everything was deeply true. The party was, as expected, a delightful mess. There was cake made by 3 different neighbors, one with corn, one with carrot, and one with chocolate and soft brigadeiro frosting. There was improvised dancing with a playlist made by a teenager with questionable taste. There were kids eating marshmallows instead of lunch and adults drinking soda from glass cups. Lucia and Dylan danced in the middle of the yard, tripping over each other's feet, laughing, missing steps, completely unaware of the many eyes watching them. "Do you think they'll write about this on gossip sites?" Dylan asked, spinning her slowly. "No, this is too personal to make the headlines. And yet, it feels like the ending of a movie." "Maybe, but I'd rather think of it as the start of another one." Later, while they were collecting chairs, Lucia found Dylan sitting on the steps at the entrance, his jacket on his lap and bare feet. "Running away from the mess?" "Trying to hold everything here," he said, tapping his chest. "My whole life, I thought I needed everything to be someone. Today, I realize all I needed was a little ground, a roof, and you." She sat down beside him. "Do you still miss everything you left behind?" "Some things, but I've learned that peace is too expensive when you pay for it with your own identity." "And who are you now?" "A man who had everything, lost everything, and found what really matters in the middle of the sidewalk." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I've changed too. Before, I wanted to prove I was strong, independent, invincible. Today, I just want to fall knowing someone will help me get back up. I'll help you. But I warn you, I might fall with you. Then we'll fall together and get up laughing." Their wedding didn't make the cover of a magazine. No TV network showed up. No celebrity posted a picture. But in the months that followed, more than 20 new kids started attending the center. A new mural was painted with the hands of all the volunteers, and a recycling project became a local reference thanks to a simple idea from Dylan: turn what's discarded into something beautiful. Lucia started teaching writing workshops for women in the community. Dylan created a mentorship network for young social entrepreneurs, and the Biblio Caro, which had wobbly wheels, was replaced by a colorful van nicknamed Biblio Ferg. Sometimes the past knocked on their door. A curious journalist, a business proposal, an old acquaintance from the company, but none of them could reach the couple who had built their own world with their own rules. And what about Lucia's ex, Adrian? He showed up months later, sending a digital invite to the launch of his new startup. Lucia smiled, deleted the email, and, without any resentment, went back to painting a child's face with blue paint. She already had everything she needed, and curiously, none of what she once thought she wanted. On the first anniversary of the Centro Raíces, Dylan organized another ceremony. Just for them. No audience, no formal clothes, just a note taped to the door with the message, "Want to renew the contract?" Lucia responded with another sheet of paper. "Only if I can add more clauses." "Like what?" he asked. "Like mandatory kisses when waking up, laughing together even on hard days, setting aside one Sunday a month to do absolutely nothing." "Approved," he said, with indefinite validity. She signed it with a blue marker, right in the middle of his forehead, just to annoy him. And he laughed, like someone who knew he had won all the battles that truly mattered. What did you think of Dylan and Lucia's story? Share your opinion in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to follow all our stories, and feel free to check out more touching stories by clicking here at the end screen.